I'm
Okay.
a huge Celtics fan.
Let's go.
Like huge. Literally obsessed.
Hey guys, welcome to Without a Roadmap. This is the show for the product people who don't have all the answers. We'll be telling the stories of the product folks who get the job done but are still figuring it out. My name is Yonas.
I'm Cameron. We're both product managers here at Parlor, which is a startup located in downtown Boston. Today we have Kaitlyn with us, who's also a PM at Zipcar.
Happy to be here.
Woo! So today we have Kaitlyn here. Why don't you just get us started and tell us who you are, everything about you.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a product manager at Zipcar. Before that, I actually did a lot of marketing. So I was at another Boston-based startup called Jebit for several years. And before that, I was at an advertising tech company. So it's been a bit of a journey from a bunch of tech marketing roles and all sorts of different disciplines within marketing into product management.
Cool. Why the switch from marketing into product?
How much time do you have? It's been, I think, a very literal process of elimination where kind of coming out of school, I realized I wanted to do something that let me write. I wanted to do something where I got to work with people on a team, communicate, try to make people happy. And that ended up being marketing because I also wanted a job that, helped pay student loans. And I liked a lot of it. It was a really good starter job because it was a lot of product management, a lot of or product marketing, a lot of website management, a lot of content marketing, sales enablement. So I was able to do a bunch of different roles within one role essentially, but still didn't really like it. So I started thinking about, okay, what do I want to do next? And I realized that the kind of content marketing, product marketing was my favorite part of it. So I turned to this role at Jebit, where I started as a content marketer and then became kind of this one-woman marketing team for a couple years. And there was a lot that I really loved about that I think now looking back, the parts that I love were really related to kind of product management skills. And so I kind of took that and said, this still isn't a right fit. Ended up quitting without a job, which was probably one of the seemingly scariest, but actually not, once I did it, scary at all things that I've ever done. And then did a bunch of freelance consulting gigs and decided I really wanted to take a hard pivot into product management.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. The overlap in the skill set is something that I've started to notice a lot more as we've done more marketing stuff here at Parlor. Kind of curious from your perspective, like why there isn't a lot of overlap at other companies, or like, maybe tell me from your perspective if there's a lot of marketing and product overlap, and like in terms of how the teams work together and the types of work. Because from what I've seen lately, there's a lot of overlap in terms of the general goals, although there might be something like, customer retention is a goal that is assigned to like the marketing team, but there's a lot of smaller things that a product team is doing to like drive the product in support of those goals. So I'm curious, like, if you've seen a lot of overlap in, them actually working directly together, because I haven't in my experience.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was previously at a lot of B2B tech companies like yourselves, and I think in that situation, there can be a ton of collaboration between product and marketing. So especially on the product marketing front and kind of just driving results through things like demand gen. So I think those are the two biggest areas where it was kind of, one, how can we best position this emerging technology as something that people actually want? And then two, what is the product team's input on kind of how we could best get people to sign up? So I think I've seen overlap there, but I've also had instances where the two smallest teams at a company were product and marketing. So we were so strapped that it was like, I know I should be working with you, I'm not, and that's stressing me out, but we also have these huge goals that we need to kind of tackle. So it's been interesting coming to kind of my biggest company yet with Zipcar and seeing pretty tight collaboration between product and marketing, and like you mentioned, shared goals, shared KPIs, and really making sure that everything we're doing is laddering up to that, and then that there's a lot of input from our marketing stakeholders. So I think it really depends on the company, but it seems to make the most sense when you let those two teams really collaborate because there's just so much shared knowledge there.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because because I believe you were a director at Jebit before, and so coming over to the product side, like I really wanted to ask you, like, how you think a product and marketing team should like align and like drive towards the shared goals.
It's a good question. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I wish there was, but I think the biggest thing is it just boils down to communication. You need to really understand each other's kind of business goals and then how they ladder up into whatever that maybe overarching key result that you're driving towards is. So I think my strategy has just been to ask a ton of questions and try to not make that many assumptions about, now that I'm a product manager, about what our marketing team wants and kind of why they're doing what they're doing. I think it's really important to understand that before you start kind of making sweeping assumptions about things or saying, hey, we're going to go in this direction. So I think the communication is probably the most important part and the cornerstone of the relationship. But I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think it just comes down to making sure you ask the right questions, you listen, you provide feedback. I know marketers respond really well to data. So if you kind of show them, hey, we should do this reason because of, it's going to have this lift in conversion, or it's going to, improve X KPI by 10%. They're really responsive to that too. So I think it's a little bit of both the communication and the data side of things.
Yeah. Because recently I've been trying to write product announcements for new upcoming features and everything. And I feel like it'd probably be best kind of have when the product team is thinking of releasing a new feature or building a new feature because they hear XYZ from customers, the market, whatever it may be. I feel like it's probably best to kind of align with marketing team before you actually hand stuff off, so you have a story to tell. It's when you're going to make those announcements, what the customer pain points is, how you're trying to solve it, so that the actual product feature itself actually comes out the right way the first time.
Yeah, and I think one thing that works really well at Zipcar is the kind of investment in user research that happens both in the marketing and the product team, and then the sharing of that research across teams. So our product marketing team will lead different kind of persona-based research projects. Our UX team might lead some kind of more specific feature testing or user testing or things like that, where they're sharing their insights back with marketing and vice versa. And same with us, we'll share usage data. We'll share our own research that we're doing. So I think if you're working off the same kind of set of shared information, it does make that so much easier to then say, the market wants this, these are kind of the benefits of this new feature, so this is jointly how we should talk about it.
So to kind of pivot away from the whole marketing talk, what's the most surprising thing about being a PM that you've encountered so far?
Probably how many meetings you're in. And it sounds probably kind of silly, and sometimes I do think, okay, I've maybe over-indexed on meetings, so I do block off time on my calendar now, but I think it's really important to realize how much of your time is spent listening and understanding and collaborating with people, because you have to really figure out, how can I lead without authority? I'm a product manager, but I'm also responsible for delivering results or delivering a feature or some sort of improvement. So I need to motivate my engineers. I need to collaborate with UX. I need to make sure my marketing stakeholders feel good about what we're doing. They feel listened to, that their input is actually taken into consideration because it's really valuable. So I think the symptom is a bunch of meetings, but the reality is you just spend so much time collaborating, which is obviously very important. But I think I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know how much it was going to happen.
I mean, last night, Yonas and myself were here with Keith, our CEO, and Jonah, the head of design, and we were literally here talking about the next set of powers you want to build. We were here for 2 hours just talking about it, and it's so crazy how that happens so often, and that you still have all these other stuff that you need to do. For us, we need to QA, reach out to existing customers, make sure everything's happy, and also pitching on the marketing stuff. And it's dang, we got to do all of that, and plus spend 3 hours
right. Yeah. And the worst thing was that in the morning we circled back and we're we didn't actually come up with next steps, so we have another sync planned for tomorrow morning to follow up, and we did a little bit of research, and now we're going to come back, and so curious if you have any best practices for making use of these meetings and coming out of them with the most effectively.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, it was funny, one of the biggest insights that I've ever had about myself was a fellow product manager I used to work with who told me I had a results-oriented communication style. And that helped me really realize, okay, I'm going to be that person in meetings who says, what are our next steps? Okay, you're owning this, you're owning that. I'll make sure this thing gets done. So I think it is really important to have someone who has that kind of mindset, and someone who also has a bias for action, who just says, we're going to do these things, let's not talk about it anymore. So I think it just helps to kind of have that mindset of making sure, okay, we spent this time, it was really valuable, what do we want to do with it? It's just some sort of mental check there, I think, can really help.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you're trying to move as fast as everybody does in product. You can't waste time having multiple meetings about the same thing and never deciding what to do next, because it just slows down the process. What are some of your best practices for time management? I thought I was really good at time management, but the last couple of weeks I haven't been. So.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that has made a difference for me is blocking off time on my calendar. I realized I was spending like 60% of my week in meetings, so I didn't have very much keyboard time and was feeling things kind of piling up. So I just took my manager's advice and blocked off 2 hours at a time, maybe 5 to 7 times throughout the week. And that made a huge difference. So I think being really conscious about that and saying, I need this time to be heads down, I need to be strategic, I need to finish this thing, even if it's a little bit time consuming and not that fun. It's really important to give yourself that time to work. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is just making sure I actually have that time to work and understanding too, kind of having a really critical lens on, do I need to be in this meeting? Do I not need to be? Could I not create a meeting by sending an email? Thinking of things like that. So those are probably my 2 strategies, are 1, block off time, and 2, just make sure that I'm treating my time as valuable and treating everyone else's time as valuable.
Avoid the meeting whenever possible.
Sometimes it's great though. Like there are times where we'll walk out of meetings and be sitting there like, wow, that was amazing. Like, I can't believe we just came up with this, or that was just such a good use of time. So yeah, I think it's just knowing when to go with the meeting and when to just keep it simple in email.
Yeah. We have a rule here: don't send paragraphs in Slack.
Yeah,
that's
a good one. Definitely send a paragraph
because like didn't mean to call you out.
No, it's fine. I deserve it.
Because like sometimes like stuff like that, like the tone can get lost, so people can think that you're mad at them. We're really just trying to give detailed thoughts.
Well, that's important too with the like kind of leading without authorities. You have to think about things like that. You know, if you just type this really intense paragraph and you're just excited about something, that might not come across. Or if you're sending just really, blunt 3-word responses all the time, same deal. So, and even I work with people who are fully remote, so I don't want to just hit them with the first thing in the morning being like, hey, I tested this feature, can you do this thing before we release it? You have to remember to say, hey, how's your day going?
Good morning.
Even if you're slacking them. So it's just important, because otherwise you're just kind of all business all the time.
One thing I notice is when you're agreeing with somebody and disagreeing with somebody else in Slack, it's much more visual and seems a lot more antagonistic. So that's something that, whenever possible, take it to like a face-to-face call, but whenever not, when it's also possible, like just avoid the meetings. Yeah.
So when we were kind of prepping for this, you kind of talked about a restructure happening at Zipcar. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, so we just moved into mission teams as a structure. And so the kind of difference there was we used to be in what we'll call functional teams, which is basically, you're the product manager for this part of the project, and, you kind of own every change that happens to it. And we've moved to the mission team structure, which is basically, this is your team's goal. These are the KPIs that you're laser focused on. And now you have a cross-functional team, so you can touch different parts of Zipcar, whether it's the marketing website, the registration process, the member web experience, the mobile app, things like that. So what it's done is give us all a really clear vision for, what we're trying to do this year, and has been a breath of fresh air in terms of prioritization and stakeholder communication, and even getting stakeholders just involved more, because we have a much more established kind of cadence for how we want to loop them in on things. So it's funny because I think a lot of people dread things like that. But now everyone's so excited. So we moved into this mission team structure. We're now all operating on 2-week sprints. Like, it's so much more predictable. It's focused. So it's been really kind of exciting for everyone to do this. We're only 2 months in, but it's been really great so far to have the added focus, the kind of really intense relationship with your stakeholders, and the space to have all these really important discussions that, you're not just limited to maybe one part of the product.
Yeah. I went through a couple restructuring of like the product org at Optum, my previous company, and it's definitely true. Like sometimes it can be very daunting and like kind of nerve-wracking because you don't really know what's going on, and like you don't know like where you're going to end up. Like I struggle with it because I got shifted on different product teams, or different areas of the product, like every 6 months for my first year, which is kind of hard because I'm new in my career trying to figure out how to do product stuff, and like I'm not able to like get an expertise in like one area of the product. But it seems like everything for you guys like worked out well.
Yeah, it's been going really well so far. And it's been nice to have that, I just keep saying focus, because it's so great to just say like, this is what we're focused on with our mission. These are our 2 key results that we need to drive this year, and this is how we're going to do it. It's really nice to have that structure.
So is your guys' team now like the typical like agile, like a couple engineers, QA folks, and then like you guys have a scrum master, or you guys are just...
Yeah, so not every mission team has a scrum master right now. We're hiring for several roles.
Sorry for that. A little bit of technical difficulties. We're still getting buy-in from the executive team on the show. So yeah, we're not really using a proper video camera. It overheated on us. So yeah, Kaitlyn, really, really sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah.
No
But
worries.
we're back.
Yes, we're a really scrappy
Bike.
team here. We're just finishing up talking a little bit about your reorg. I was wondering if you wanted to, keep going on this line of thinking, or should we transition?
Do you have anything else to add about that? We were talking about like the teams and how it's structured right now.
No, I mean, I think like too long didn't read, working great, cross-functional teams are awesome, staying really focused has made a huge difference.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
I think the next thing that would be kind of cool to talk about is you were a coach for a lacrosse high school team. Were there any overlaps between being a coach and being a product manager?
Yeah, the biggest one is stakeholder management. So it's funny because obviously as a coach, you are more of an authority figure than maybe a product manager where you're leading without authority and kind of really having to build that mutual trust. But it still applies as a coach. You need people to trust you. You are maybe implementing a new way of playing that you need your players to buy into. But you also have a JV team and a freshman team and parents for every single player, guardians for every single player, athletic trainers, athletic directors. So you end up having maybe 150, 200 people that are invested in what you're doing. So it's really important to kind of understand what motivates everyone, to kind of create really clear guidelines about how you communicate, how you want your players to communicate, what your values are as a program and as a varsity team and things like that. So I think there's a lot of overlap in terms of, excellent communication, stakeholder management, obviously being pretty goal driven in terms of what you want to achieve out of the season. Yeah. So it's really funny to look back and think about all of the parallels between the roles.
Yeah. So like back on that, the skill sets that, make a good product manager, it's something that we talk about just about every show. But I'm curious from your perspective, coming from marketing, were your skill sets purely on the soft side going into product management? That's like a question a lot of people have, is whether or not they need these technical skills going to product management, or always like kind of, hammering in that, generally not. So I'm curious from your perspective, coming from marketing, like, did you fear that this was something that you lacked, or now in your role, how do you feel about your technical skill set, or lack thereof potentially?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people talk about the technical versus non-technical product manager divide, and I don't 100% buy into that, because to your point, I think you can become a product manager with just so many different backgrounds, and most of the PMs I've talked to have had a really random kind of career path into product management. So I think when you look back at some of the stuff that I did maybe in my marketing role, there's just a lot that ties into it in terms of being data driven, and I had to run a website by myself, so I had to inherently have some sort of technical know-how and capabilities, because our engineering time had to build the product. Like, they didn't have time to spend helping me stand up the marketing website, so I had to figure out how to do that on my own or with very limited resources. So I kind of picked stuff up, I think, by being at a startup, but it helped in product management, but I knew it was something I was excited to learn, and I wasn't, there's a little bit of kind of worry of, hey, I might not know this, or I might be as technical as everyone else. But I think if you approach it through the mentality of, I know what I bring to the table as a product manager. And so for me, it was kind of the organization, the communication, empathy, teamwork and leadership, being really data driven. And then what I maybe don't have yet, I kind of approach it as, I'm excited to learn this, not, I don't have this thing. And I can probably complement someone else on my team. So I think that can really help if you reframe it in your mind, and it doesn't become this thing where you're worried, oh, I'm not a technical product manager.
Right. Yeah. I think, like you said, being able to pick things up quickly is almost more important.
And that's the thing, is if you can learn quickly, like, you can do anything. And I think obviously you want to come in with an understanding of Agile and, those types of principles.
Like the frameworks and everything.
Yeah, all the frameworks, like those are relatively easy to learn online, because there's just so many resources. You want to understand, what is an API, or how are people using the product of the company that I want to work at, or maybe how might the engineering team be set up, things like that. But you don't need to agonize over, oh my gosh, like, I don't know Ruby, or I don't know Python, or I'm not a front-end developer. Like, you're not expected to do that. So it's okay to not know those things, and it's important to figure out, what should I know, what shouldn't I know, and lean on your teammates to complement your skill set, and you can learn from that, or you can learn from your manager. So I think it's okay to not have a technical background, and sometimes it can really be helpful. For me, my role as a product manager is to get people to sign up for Zipcar. So it's really helpful that I have a marketing background and can really empathize with our marketing team.
Yeah, that's good.
That makes a lot of sense. I think maybe we can talk about what's the favorite thing you've shipped, either as a PM or even as a marketer.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite feature as a PM I can't talk about yet. So
okay.
It's coming.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Another shameless plug. Sorry. So, and we've done a lot of really cool stuff that is maybe smaller. My team does a lot of A/B testing, so it's always nice to see. Like, we did a redesign of Zipcar.com's pricing page, and it's just massively improved conversion rate, which is really awesome. So
check it out.
Zipcar.com/pricing. It's very pretty now. So things like that. That was a really great win, even though it was a very straightforward redesign from one version to another version. But we A/B tested it, got some good data, implemented it, and are still seeing a lift. So that's been really cool. And then as a marketer, I'm trying to think, so many website redesigns. The first conference I ever did at Jebbit, I ran by myself, and it was really cool to kind of get that out the door. And I think that actually kind of tied into, it was a lot.
I hear that's what marketing's about.
It was a lot. We decided, hey, we need to do a customer conference this year, and also you're in charge and all. You're doing it by yourself. But that was kind of cool because it was similar to product management, where I had to figure out what do people actually want. What do our customers want when they come to a conference? How can we make it an unconference and make it a little bit more exciting than your average one, because that's just not really our brand at the time. So that was another cool thing that I'm actually pretty proud of, even though it's totally devoid of product management. It was still shipping something out the door basically by myself, without a lot of resources. So that's probably another cool thing that I've shipped, I guess.
So I'm curious, since back on the excitement of shipping something cool, and specifically Zipcar, which is a really popular product and used by a lot of people. It's very visible, but it's also pretty mature. I'm curious if that maturity, if you feel like that's slowed down the amount of innovation or space for innovation within the product, or are there those still those really cool new projects that you're working on that you feel is going to change the way that your users actually interact with the product itself?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think a lot of people look at bigger companies, and I've done that in the past where I've only been at startups thinking, oh my gosh, this must be so slow. But I'm very happy to say Zipcar is just super entrepreneurial and really creative and really innovative. And it's amazing how much autonomy we have as PMs to say, this is this thing that I think we should tackle. Here's all the research I spent. Putting together for this. I've worked with UX, I've talked with marketing, I've talked with actual prospective customers or existing customers. Now let's, do this thing. There's so much autonomy and leeway to do things like that, which has been really cool. And I think why Zipcar's still been able to drive value for people 20 years in. It's Zipcar's 20th anniversary in April. Wow. So it's kind of cool to see, this company that's been around for a couple of decades is still, providing a space for so much creativity and this entrepreneurial, innovative mindset that has been able to help us kind of continue to, innovate on the product, delight members, and think about what we can do for, 2020 and beyond.
And our new features dropping soon, so.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Catherine, who's a PM also on my team, has been leading this amazing initiative. So it's going to be really great when we can scale it out. So
make sure you let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. How about we do some rapid fire real quick before the camera goes on us again? Favorite place to eat in Boston?
Oh my gosh, all of them. Lately have been really into Ruka and Downtown Crossing.
Ruka? Hey, I have not been there.
That is it's a bougie
Peruvian,
Asian or
Japanese fusion. It's pretty cool.
Asian fusion. Talking about.
I said Asian fusion. Peruvian, Japanese. She just went really specific.
Yeah, I said the exact fusion that it was.
Favorite place to travel?
So many good places. Iceland, I think.
Oh, I have not been there.
Highly recommend.
And maybe the last one you don't have to answer, but what's your most controversial opinion?
I was going to say that I hate doing things on my phone, but when I said I didn't like the Patriots, I got a really big rise, so maybe it's that.
I'm a fan of that. I'm with you.
It's been really great having you on the show, Kaitlyn.
All right, well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Make sure you subscribe. I'm trying to get subscribers up. So until then, until next time. Bye.